Welcome back to Second Cup. I'm your host, Tim Heller. The guest for this episode is my cousin, J.T. Roach. If you've been around the Hellers and Roaches at the same time, you know the vibe. If you haven't yet, then you're about to be educated. JT is a singer and songwriter based in LA and was the winner of the season 1 finale of NBC's show Songland, where OneRepublic chose his song Somebody to Love to perform and record. He also wrote and is featured on the titular song in the new album from Seven Lions Music, Beyond the Veil, streaming everywhere and available for purchase on October 21st. If you've been enjoying Second Cup, I invite you to support us in any of the following ways. First is by sharing episode links on social media and tagging @TimHellerCreative. Second is by rating, leaving reviews, and subscribing in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening and watching. Third is subscribing, liking, and commenting on our YouTube channel, Tim Heller Creative. And finally, if you'd like to support financially, you can Venmo @TimHellerCreative or reach out via email to tim@timhellercreative.com to discuss sponsoring one or several episodes. Any and all of these actions mean a ton and help boost the show's visibility. And any of the financial support is going directly into sending some gifts to my guests and hiring someone to help me manage the boatload of content I have so I can properly promote them all. Now, top off your beverage, get comfy, and enjoy this episode of Second Cup Extra Cup, my cousin, J.T. Roach.
There he is. What's up? What's up, playa?
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Look at your little
How's
studio
it-
setup. I've got that same. I've got that same curtain behind this curtain over here.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have a giant mirror, so it helps with the reflections. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Am I is sound coming in okay for you?
Yeah. How about
Cool.
on your end? No echo.
Sounds
coming
great.
Through?
Sounds great. Is
Amazing.
that
Look at us, a couple
SM7B?
of sound perfect. It's not. I
okay.
was looking at one of those just because it's a beautiful mic and everybody's got them for podcasting and everything. And but I have an engineer friend in New York who was like, before you buy an SM7B, check out the Samson Q9U because it's like $300 cheaper and it sounds just as nice. And so I checked it out and it's a little tank. I love it.
What's it called? A Samson? What is it?
Samson SAMSON Q9U, and it's like
Q9U.
$120.
Oh wow! Yeah, it looks great.
So
Sick.
yeah, I like it.
That's awesome.
It's a combo XLR USB mic, so I'm
Sick.
it's just messing around with it, seeing, and I'm happy with it so far.
Hell yeah! Sounds great.
Thanks. So JT, thank you for coming on Second Cup. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this, and
happy to be here.
Been a minute since we've seen each other and gotten to catch up, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too.
Before we jump into some questions that I have, I'd love for you to kind of just give a quick lowdown. I know there's a lot that's happened in your life and a lot happening currently, but just a quick Cliff Notes on who JT Roach is.
Okay. Well, my name is JT Roach. That's John Thomas Roach, but I go by JT. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I come from a big Irish Catholic family, 33 cousins, my parents, my two older sisters. Shout out to my niece, Rose. It's her birthday today. Her first birthday.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, Rose.
Today. Happy birthday, Rosie. She's a redhead named Rose, and she's cute as can be. She's got a little cold right now, but she's just cute as can be. So happy birthday to Roser. And what else? I went to school. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin my whole life. I went to Our Lady Queen of Peace for grade school. I went to Edgewood High School for high school. I went to University of Wisconsin for college, with my freshman year at University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. But I graduated from UW-Madison with a degree in history.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, degree in history, and I'm working in music. I worked for my dad's video production company for a few years after college. He runs a video production company out of Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Shout out Roach Projects. I've worked for them as well.
Roach Incorporated. And my Uncle Jim works there too, so I got to work with him. And it's an awesome business. But I moved to Chicago, worked at the Onion and Comcast Sportsnet for a little bit, just as a rite of passage, because most of my family went and worked at Chicago, in Chicago at some point. And while I was there, read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Yes.
And it was like a life-changing book for me in just that I realized, I spent all my free time working on music, and that's like where my mind was constantly and what I was excited about at all times. And I was like, I need to be doing that for my career. And I think the real turning point was reading that book, and a point in that book was basically like, treat yourself like a professional until you become a professional. You know, I was always kind of at that point like, how I was just like waiting for somebody else to hand me the opportunity that made it my career instead of just committing fully to it being my career. So yeah, at that point I moved home for 6 months, saved money, moved out to California. I've been out here for like 8 years now, and doing music full time and living the dream, man. I signed a pub deal with BMG Chrysalis after a few years here. Got a manager, did a TV show called Songland, won the OneRepublic episode of Songland. Just signed a new pub deal with Prescription Songs this
Congratulations.
spring. Thank you. And they're awesome, and I've just been working my tail off and living the dream and having a blast and just trying to stay sane.
Yeah.
And I just got married 2 months ago to my beautiful wife, Mara Duval Roach. We have an adorable puppy named Carlton.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She's the best. Super proud
Carlton's
of
a
her.
total stud too. If you're not already following JT on Instagram, follow him at the very least for Carlton content, because he is quite the stud.
My dog Carlton is all my social media accounts are basically Carlton fan accounts at this point, because he's the cutest. Yeah, did I touch on everything? That's a lot of humble bragging, or a lot of braggery.
No, that's exactly. I want it to be not humble bragging too. So
cool.
that's perfect.
Cool.
I want to touch on the War of Art, because that book,
let's do it. I love that book.
I mean, I've read that book. I don't read a whole lot, which probably says a lot about me. But I've read that book like 5 or 6 times. I was first introduced to it in college, and it changed my perspective on things then, and totally shook my entire being. And then every time I feel like I'm in a rut, I go back and I revisit it, and I find something new, and something else resonates even deeper.
Totally.
And specifically what you said about treating yourself like a professional until you are a professional. If I remember correctly, you challenged yourself to write a new song every day for a year. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. And the challenge at that time was kind of, I called it Project 52, because my goal was to put a song out every week for a year.
Got it.
Of which after like 3 or 4, I mean, I think I did like 5 releases or something like that. And then that was right around the time when I moved to California, and my friends were like, this is not the right business model. You don't need to be doing that. Like, just do what the rest of us are doing, which is get the songs the best that they can be and get a proper launch and blah, 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 blah. But I proved to myself that I could have kept doing it. And, certainly learned how to write a song a day. Right now I'm doing like probably 2 to 3 songs a day, with proper breaks in between. But, I've learned how to do work quickly, and that was like a phase where I was learning how to do work quickly. But it's about balance too, because you want the work to be great, so revisions are a part of it too, and you got to find your rhythm. But I've definitely learned how to work quickly, and that phase was like where I learned how to do that for sure.
Yeah. And outside of like, or I guess what goes into that working quickly, can you kind of break down when you first started doing that? Because it's kind of like the Gary V version of content creation, of like kind of what's being pushed right now is like, you got to be posting like 8 videos a day, and it's all got to slap, and it's all got to go viral and all that. And I myself challenged myself this year to being like, put out the equivalent of 1 piece of content a day by the end of the year. And on paper, it's just like, January 1st, let's go. I've got this. And then a couple months in, it's like, okay, I've been doing this. It's exhausting. It's really hard, but I've learned something. So what was that process like for you for that first couple releases that you did? And how has anything translated currently into your work how you work from that process?
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's, a lot of people say 10,000 hours, putting in 10,000 hours at your craft, and then, you're a pro suddenly when you hit the 10,000 mark or whatever it is. I think of Ed Sheeran and John Mayer. Ed Sheeran talked about how he would go out and play shows, and just assume that your first shows are going to be bad, and you just have to do it so much that you just understand the environment, you get comfortable, you find a groove, you find your rhythm, you learn from just doing. John Mayer says the same thing about songwriting. He's like, you just have to just vomit songs until, just be doing it. Like, sit down and do it. And by moving and creating, you learn the lessons naturally. And I feel like that was the case for me. I was lucky in that when not only was I like kind of nurtured by the music culture in Madison, and with just like finding good people to work with in Madison and Chicago and the Midwest, and just like learning from anyone and everyone that I could. Shout out to all my homies who were part of my creative journey in those eras. But I was also really lucky in that, like, when I got to LA and I ran out of money after the first 6 months and was like, how am I going to make this work? I was really lucky to have a group of friends who were living in Silver Lake in a 3-bedroom, like, apartment condo house where they were developing a record label. And I lived in the hallway above the living room and wrote demos out of a walk-in closet for 3 years. And that was a really unique incubation. We kind of use the word incubation, but it was just like a period where we were just like writing so much. So many of those songs are not going anywhere, but like I learned so much. There was some really special records that came out of that phase, but like I learned so much. Is that where your
Hermione song came from? Was that during that era?
Man, the Hermione song. Yeah, that was from like the college. Oh my God, that's such a name drop. I love that. That was from like my Wisconsin, like, before I was writing my own stuff, I was doing a lot of covers, and then it turned into writing my own stuff, and that was a phase where I was like doing YouTube videos and posting them, and that was like a Harry Potter like comedy song. I definitely wrote. Is it
still out in the world? Can we point people towards that? Because it's beautiful.
I took it down just because I think it's not as 2022 as you want it to be. It's like, I think about that the way like Bo Burnham talks about his earlier content. He's like, I'm not that person anymore. But like for what it was hilarious. It went viral. It was hilarious. I love Harry Potter, but I wouldn't play that song out live anymore.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I feel like
it's just that repetition of getting comfortable in that discomfort and being really familiar with your surroundings, like you said, what Ed Sheeran said.
Totally. And just like being comfortable with the idea that not everything you create is going to be good. You're going to write a lot of ideas that are just bad too. But like for every, you write 100 ideas that are bad early on and one of them's good. And then 2 years later, instead of it being a good idea out of every 100 ideas, it's like 1 out of 20. And then it's like 1 out of 10. And then it's like, you're honing your taste and you're honing your ability to create quickly, and you're learning to trust your taste more and more. I also think it was really crucial in those early days to have people to bounce ideas off of whose opinion you trust, who are in the place that you're trying to be with your career path, where you can send them work and they can say, here's what's working and here's what's not. I think early on in my career, I think just early on in any creative path, it's easy to find people to just tell you this is really great and then not say anything else because they just love that you're pursuing your craft. But like finding people who can say, my rule is always 3 things that I think are working, 3 things that I think could be better. And that's what I always encourage people to do is like, here's what you're doing right. Here's where I think it could be better. It's so important to get that sounding board from people who you trust, so that you can keep getting better.
Yeah. I love that. The 3v3 is crucial, and it's hard when you're creating stuff by yourself. I mean, I'm sure in that house with all of your friends and everything, you guys could just shoot the shit and bounce and either roast each other or build each other up in the same breath.
100%. Yeah, that was a really special thing about that house, because we could like literally make fun of each other's songs. Or we could like at the end of the day, we would just blast it in the living room on the big speakers and just be bouncing around the room like this record's going to change your life. All of that and everything in between happened, or it was like, oh, this chorus is great, but the verses are terrible. It also, that kind of feedback helps you separate yourself from the work that you make, where your ego's not super tied up into it. Like, I think early on, if I wrote something that I loved, I wanted to just like be like, oh, this is me, this is who I am, this is my sound, this is my story. There's like this feeling that you're not going to be able to make more work that's like your good work, and it's just so not true. You're gonna keep getting better, and you're gonna make better and better work. And the more you do it, the less your ego is kind of tied up in the work itself. And I feel like that was so important.
Yeah, you're answering all the questions that I had without me asking them. Is like that.
Sick.
How precious. Sick. Interview done. We're good. Do you still get precious with your work when you're putting it out, or has it gotten to a point with, because you are cranking so many different songs out for yourself and for other artists, that you're able to just like set it and forget it? Or do you still have those moments of like, this is my baby? Yeah,
I collaborate so much more now than I did early on, that there's always push-pull in any collaboration. You always have your idea of what it is, and the other person has their idea of what it is. And, I think that's how you get records that are not records that you would make yourself, or pieces of art that you would not make by yourself, is when you collaborate, is that tension between you and the people you're collaborating with is what makes it different and what makes it exciting and new. And yeah, you got to pick your battles, like, especially with songs when it gets to the mixing and mastering phase, and people are exchanging notes for the way that they're hearing it. Like in electronic music, I remember early on, I'd be like, can you turn the vocals up so I can hear the vocals? And they're like, no, like, we want to hear the kick and the snare and the synths. And like, you got to learn how to pick your battles and meet in the middle on those kinds of things. I would say I'm really lucky in that the majority of people that I'm collaborating with, everybody's really open-minded. Everybody wants everybody to love it. And, the vibe has been really good, but there's definitely been situations where, you have it out a little bit too.
Yeah, I bet. I'm sure. It's so going from, I'd love to rewind a little bit and start with kind of the beginning, because when I think about our family, and for people who don't know us, we are second cousins, I don't know how it works, but same
family.
Irish Catholic family. We're related somehow.
We're
that
Irish
71 cousins on one side, and that's how it works.
We're super Irish, and we're super family.
Yep.
Yeah.
Much Irish, so family.
Yeah.
When I think about our family, it's music isn't necessarily the first, or like musicality and music abilities aren't really the first thing that I think of. And so I mean, everybody sings. It's a family full of Irish people with drinking problems. So the more we drink, the louder we get, and we love to party and have amazing weddings and all of that.
So real.
But how did you figure out that you had some talent, and how did you nurture that and go from, okay, I think I want to do this, to getting up for the first time and starting that process of honing your skills and starting with the first 100 hours of the 10,000 hours? What did that look like?
I think what made it clear to me that I should be doing music was just how much I loved it. An example I always use was, I played high school sports. I played basketball and football. And before basketball games, when, like, I had a teammate who was just a phenomenal basketball player named Mike Shaw, who's like one of my longtime really good friends. And I know before the game, he was thinking about like whether he was going to make 3-pointers, and he was thinking about dynamics on the court, and like he just like had a knack for numbers and stuff like that. And I was the guy who was thinking about the mix that we came out to on the sound system. I burned the CD before every game. You had 5 songs. I knew who you were playing. I wanted the 5 songs to be perfect, and like that was the stuff that I thought about. And I've always just loved. I'm always thinking about music in Wisconsin, and sort of with my friend groups in Wisconsin. I felt like a little bit like an odd one out, because I would just fixate on strange things. Like I'd be like, have you heard this latest song? Like the snare on this latest song. And I would go off on tangents, and people look at me like, no, like,
sure,
it's a good song.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good song. But, so I don't know. I felt like I always just had like an unusual amount of passion for music, and I still to this day don't feel like I'm particularly talented or, you know, like I was gifted in any way. I really don't. I think I'm just like a massive fan of music, and I've spent so much time around it and doing it that I've like gradually gotten better. But my early work was just terrible. It was so bad. I mean, like I remember the first songs that I recorded on my parents' Macintosh, like my senior year of high school. I was just using the built-in computer mic to record guitars and vocals, and they're just really bad songs. But at the same time,
you couldn't not do it though, right?
Yeah, totally. I had to do it, and I just loved it. Yeah, I just, you know, you just gradually get better from doing it. I think doing covers early on was really smart because I kind of absorbed how other songs that I loved worked. I think that was like a cool, smart thing to do early in your journey, is like play a lot of other people's work and just see what it feels like to play a great song and to sing a great song, and what the momentum and energy of one feels like, and just like internalize that organically.
Yeah,
I think I'm grateful for that.
Who were some of your biggest influences in terms of those covers that you were playing, and who inspired you to develop your style that you have and to really keep going with this? And what did you learn specifically from those people?
Sick. I love talking about this stuff because I have so many influences. I mean, when I was in high school, I feel like a rite of passage, everybody has to go through a Dave Matthews Band phase. So
God. Did you ever go to Alpine Valley?
Of course. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I never went. I was too much of a nerd, and so like all the people with friends would go to Alpine Valley for the weekend and be like, yeah, we're going, like I scored some fresh green, we're gonna have a great time. It's great.
It's so sick, bro. He played 41 for like the 900th time, but the flute solo on the bridge was different. Oh yeah.
Yeah. One of my best friends is still the biggest Dave Matthews stan in the world. Carl Lundstedt, if you're listening to this. That was his entire bachelor party, was us on a boat in Puget Sound and him blasting.
Of course,
marching,
man.
So it's great.
Cult bands like that, like Dave Matthews Band, Fish, Grateful Dead. There's
Fish.
People who just get reeled into the cult, and once you like learn to appreciate the shows all being different, like you're sucked into that world, and it's and I get it because I had my Dave Matthews Band phase. Like I had live the Central Park CDs, you know, like they have their album version, but like the Central Park live version where they play Cortez the Killer with Warren Hayes, and Warren Hayes is playing like a crazy 5-minute guitar solo. That's incredible. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's super sick. But
you sitting with your friends and you're talking about it the entire time while it's playing and just being like, oh, just wait for this part. And it's like,
yeah, exactly. Have you heard that like 9-minute intro on American Baby? It's so sick. But yeah,
have I ever? I'll play it for you with my mouth right now.
Exactly. But I think Dave Matthews and John Mayer in particular, I feel like you have to shout out, because I feel like I learned a lot of guitar technique from playing their songs, because they're both such proficient guitar players, and they have such great songs to play acoustically, you know. And I never learned classically, like I'm not reading notes. I learned from guitar tabs, and I see shapes, like chord shapes visually, and I learned just by like learning chords one at a time. And I've slowly injected some music theory, but I'm very much not a Berklee kid who like learned theory and classical training and ear training, like all that stuff.
Circle of fifths, like, and
So yeah, I mean, I know I know enough of that stuff to get around, but I also kind of just like operating on instinct too. So I like, you know, but yeah, like learning. I kind of just learned by learning my favorite songs and, you know, internalizing it by playing Wonderwall 100 times at every bonfire I ever went to. I was definitely that guy.
Yeah. Did you always bring your own guitar? Or would you just kind of be like, please have a guitar, please have a guitar? Yes.
I would bring a guitar for sure. I was definitely the annoying guy who brought his guitar to all sorts of things that you don't need to bring a guitar to. And I definitely was the guy who would do that and play all the songs that you would think that I would play, which is like Wonderwall and Dave Matthews Band and John Mayer and Your Body is a Wonderland. And
yes. I wanted to be that guy. In high school. I just wasn't cool enough. I couldn't do it.
Oh God. I don't know if cool is the right word for that guy, but I was that guy. And I just, I loved going to like a bonfire with my friends in high school on a weekend and being the guy who would just try to play 30 seconds of whatever song people wanted to hear. That was always a fun thing. I think by the time I got to college, it kind of went from that singer-songwriter world sort of more towards a lot more R&B. Like when I was in college was right when like Drake Best I Ever Had came out and like Miguel was popping, and I started doing a lot of acoustic R&B covers of like hip hop and R&B records, and loved that style of music. I feel like I went R&B and hip hop when a lot of people went emo. Like I never really had an emo phase. I maybe had a short one my freshman year of college at St. Thomas, but it was like Dashboard Confessional emo.
Okay.
And like Panic at the Disco emo, but it was a very short-lived phase. I was mostly like R&B soul hip hop, so I would cover those songs. So that, I have a lot of R&B soul hip hop influences from like those eras, and like, I definitely did some of my early work was like rapping. I don't really rap anymore, other than I have been rapping a good amount because I've been writing K-pop, and rapping in K-pop is like totally a thing. So I'm glad that I learned how to rap early, because that like a lot of those songs are like, they're like legit living in the 90s there, and like these boy bands have so many, there's like rap verses on so many of those songs. So like being able to write a rap verse is a skill that I'm glad that I learned in that era.
So that is a beautiful segue into, you recently were in Korea, and I want to know, when Jess and I lived in Korea, we were doing a musical there for like 7 months, and one of our friends, her husband, they were both American Idol alums from like season 3 and season 5, I think. So like early days.
Sick.
And her husband got flown in to write with a K-pop label. How did you get involved in that? Like, what was that experience like? How did you land that? What was that like? And are you rapping in Korean? Do you speak Korean at all now?
No. Oh God, no. I know 안녕하세요, which is hello. I tried to learn thank you, but I can't.
감사합니다.
Yeah, 감사합니다. But I screw it up every time. But I say it close enough that people know what I'm trying to say, and then they
go, "Oh, you're so
cute." You're saying it wrong, you idiot. I straight up just got invited by my friend Josh Cumby, who I work with a bunch, who's amazing. He cultivated the like roster for a camp that we did for SM Entertainment there. It was 6 people. We did 19 songs in 4 days. I did 8. I did like 8 to 10 songs in 4 days, and then we had a listening session and went out and got Korean barbecue on the last day, and drank a lot of soju.
Soju makes me grateful that I'm sober, because it is sneaky. That first weekend out that we went out, we got flown in, and we were expecting to go into rehearsals right away, and they're like, "Hey, here's your first week of per diem, and you've got 7 days off until we start." And we we're like, "Oh, cute!" So we went out in Gangnam and into the hills in behind the main drag, and that first night was rough. It is a sneaky little piece.
Yep, that soju sneaks up on you. That was our last night there, but but it was great. I feel like K-pop is having a really great wave in world pop music right now for a lot of reasons, but I think people also just have so much respect for how the business is handled there. The music is exciting and fun. The fandom with the music there is they're really, I always say they're living in the 90s there, because it's like boy bands and girl bands are huge there. People still buy hard copies of their work. So it's like, obviously with streaming, the amount of income coming in from publishing for songwriters has diminished significantly in the last 20 years, but they're still buying hard copies over there. And perfect example is like, it's almost like if NSYNC put out an album and then there was also a Justin Timberlake version of the album, people are buying both of those, where it's like they buy the band version, the original band version, and then they buy their favorite band member's version of the album.
Yeah.
And
the fandom there is wild. It's, even for a show like ours. So we did Jekyll and Hyde, the musical, and we were kind of told that like that is their favorite musical. And it was like the show that brought American musical theater to Korea. And so we were like, okay,
Sick.
that's interesting. Because here in the States, it's kind of like, okay, it's like an 80s pop rock. It's just ballad after ballad after ballad, but it's fun. And it has somewhat of a cult following here. But in Korea, like we didn't realize, especially in Seoul, because we toured the entire country, but in Seoul specifically, like Jess and I were on stage for maybe 30, 45 minutes of this 3-hour show, and we had fans that would show up. And we had people who would come see the show every single night, front row, like throw stuffed animals and stuff like that. And it's like tiny hearts every single night. And it's wild how dedicated they are.
That's so sick. That must have been so much fun.
It was a great experience. It was wild to say the least, but it was really cool to be able to live abroad and like really be there for a long time.
For sure. Yeah. Something about the fandom there is like next level. Like I think they get the fans invested in the story of all the people involved and all of the, artists, characters, roles. Like there's like all this lore and background and story behind every like person. It's so next level, and it's like easy. It's not hard to see why the fans become super fans,
Yeah. So you touched on the licensing for music. So this is kind of like a 2-part question that I have. First part is, how is it, not like how much money do you make, but how are you making money now versus when you first started in the industry, and how have you seen that change? And then second part I want to touch on, excuse me, is if you've gotten involved in the NFT world at all and how you see that affecting the music industry. So I'd love to start with kind of what the pricing models are now. I know that for not every listener will know like kind of what's happened with Spotify and streaming and everything like that, but kind of take us through your journey and your experience of how you've seen things develop and where you're at now in terms of generating that income as an artist.
Totally. Well, it's a very different time in the last like 10 to 20 years versus what music publishing was prior to that, because streaming has changed the music industry so dramatically. I mean, if you just think about what you were spending on music in the 90s versus what you're spending on music now. In the 90s, you would go out and you buy albums to hear the one or two. Or go to the
library and rip them all off onto your computer.
Yes. Yep. That was the beginning of it, was like, Napster and LimeWire and, all that whole era, which we grew up in. But prior to that, it was like you love that new single on the radio, you go out and you buy the vinyl or you buy the CD of the album just to hear your 2 favorite songs, and then you start to love the rest of the album, etc. And you're paying, whatever it is, $10 to $20 for that music, or the single, or $5 for the single with 2 extra songs on it, or whatever it is. And now you have a Spotify, Apple, or none of those things, and you listen to music off of YouTube for free. And you're paying, like $8 to $15 a month to get everything. And songwriters, I'm a songwriter, I'm a top liner mainly. I'm also an artist. I'm also a music producer. But
what does top liner mean?
Top liner is a word for just a singer, songwriter, lyricist, melody person who goes to sessions to write the song. So very often I get booked for sessions with 2, 3, 4 people where you're in the room to help write the top line melody. Top line is just another word for like the melody of the vocal of the song. Okay. And the lyrics for the song. So today, I have a session at noon at Paramount Studios in Hollywood with an awesome producer and an awesome artist / writer. And the 3 of us have the studio for the day to write a song, either for the artist or for pitch to another artist, depending on where the song goes. And I'm in that room not as the producer but as the writer. But yesterday I was in the room as a vocal producer / co-producer for an artist where I was like doing the production. So it depends on the session that's booked. But that's kind of, that's what top liner means.
Cool.
And where was I again?
We're streaming, how Spotify came in. Now you pay $8, you have unlimited access to everything. Where do songwriters and artists get their cut? Yeah.
Right. So I think, the landscape's very different. It's been very hard for people who are only songwriters for the last 10 to 20 years with how streaming has changed things because the amount of money that you make from streaming is so much less. So it's been a battle for songwriters to assert ourselves legally for getting the percentage of the profits for the songs that we deserve for writing the songs. I think it's largely skewed towards labels making a good amount of money, the artists themselves making a good amount of money, because master on streaming does well, publishing is, it's kind of evolving, but, artists do well because they own master share. When a song goes out in streams, it makes money off the publishing share and off the master share. Labels and artists get a large portion of master share, along with sometimes a small portion for producers. But writers usually, historically, didn't touch master share, although now we're starting to ask for points on records. So the story has changed and evolved, and people are really trying to assert fair terms for songwriters, but it's a battle. And I think I've had to kind of diversify where my income comes from as a musician to just like stay surviving in LA and
what does that look like?
Doing it. So I think film and TV placements plays a huge role. Bigger role than people think, because the money is up front typically. So that plays a bigger role. There's more money in film and TV than there is in the music industry in general. So like if you can get music in TV shows, commercials, particularly film trailers and in films, there's money there. That played a huge role for me in recouping my pub deals. So pub deals, publishers are on one end like banks for songwriters, where they give you a big advance. Okay. And then they put you in rooms with other people in the industry to make their money back off of records that you write, because they get a portion of your publishing. So my deal with BMG, they signed me, they gave me a lump sum of money, and then they put me in rooms with other people in the industry who are making things happen. You go in, you write and produce and sing on records with those people. You place those records with people. Some of them go out with artists. Some of them go out in film and TV. The vast majority of them sit on your Dropbox in the cloud. And, especially early on, don't go anywhere. But, sometimes one will sit on the Dropbox for 5 years. And perfect example, Somebody to Love, the song that I sang on NBC Songland, I placed with OneRepublic. That was on my Dropbox for 5 years. And I loved the song, but couldn't get... Oh, it was like... more like 3 or 4, but it was something.
We'll
it was a really long time to be on a Dropbox, and for so many people heard that record, and I just kept pitching it because I loved it, and I finally got to play it on Songland and place it with OneRepublic, which was like a massive change for my career. So
that's wild. So I want to get to Songland in a second, but with your pub deal, then they give you that lump sum, assuming that that's going to be kind of your runway to be fully available for them then. And then do you make any money on those songwriting deals that you go in, if you go in, or do they get 100% of that? Or is it they are just taking like a percentage until they recoup, and then you renegotiate once that lump sum has been paid off? What is that structured like?
It depends on how your deal is structured. There's all sorts of different ways deals are structured. I think the larger the sum is that you get from them, the larger the percentages that they're going to get. I think my first deal with BMG was 50%. And I got, whatever the sum was, I think it was like 125 or something like that. And I recouped that in 3.5, 4 years. Largely off of film and TV placement, but also off of streaming, also off of radio. But I think radio really comes into play if you have like a hit, which I didn't have a hit with BMG. I had, some great trailer placements. I had the OneRepublic record. I had BMG China stuff, but it was more like a little bit of a lot of things was what got me recouped. But like for some people, it's like, you get. I know some people get like a $500,000 deal and then they write one hit and they're recouped in a year and a half. Like those stories do happen. Cute. Yeah, those stories do happen.
Have you thought about just doing that?
Have I thought about just writing a massive hit record? Totally.
Do you still get friends and family who've been like, hey, have you ever thought of doing the Netflix? Or have you ever thought about writing a song for the Spotify?
Of course. Yeah, of course. You should really send that song to Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Shit. I totally. Yeah. You're right. I will do that this afternoon.
Totally. Yeah. No, I've heard all of those things, and it's always well intentioned and super sweet. But yeah, it's the reality of the industry's a bit darker than that.
Yep, a little bit. But at
the same time, I'm just like, I'm so grateful. I always just say that if you're surviving in the music industry, you're killing it, because it's such a hard industry to not just go. Mm-hmm. Fuck this. Excuse my French.
You can swear all you want.
Fuck this. I am tapping out. This is too much. It's too much stress, anxiety. There's, you're working on spec so much, so many of the things that you work on don't go anywhere. So you really gotta love it to keep doing it. And I do. So I've just done whatever I had to do to make it work. In some phases, it meant getting a part-time job. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I was just struggling to pay rent. It was right before Songland, like the year before Songland. I was struggling to pay rent, so I actually got a part-time job coaching basketball with Bo Ryan's son, Matt Ryan, in Santa Monica, and I was coaching boys basketball aged 9 to 13. We're coaching 6 teams. California Swing, they were called, and I would coach basketball like 4 days a week. And wow. I was working two jobs at that time, which was,
so you're still going out for sessions and coaching.
Yeah, doing all of it. The coaching was largely on the weekends, and then the songwriting was largely during the week, with some practice stuff in the evenings for basketball or in the mornings. But I was basically working nonstop for like a good 5 months or whatever that was. But it actually ended up working out much better than I thought. It was definitely a shot to the ego early on. Like I really just was like kind of sad that I had to do a part-time job, but it actually relieved so much stress for me just knowing that I didn't have to like wonder if I was going to have rent money that month. And I was getting outside. I was doing something awesome for young people. I love basketball so much, and I was like actually teaching these young people how to play basketball, and just like seeing their growth, like such an awesome thing. It's like great. It was great to get out of my own head and out of my own world, because you can, end up in your own head too much. So I was getting exercise. I was getting outside. I was doing something for somebody else. It was just what I needed at that time. So I'm so grateful that I got to do that at that time. But God, the universe, whatever, whoever you believe in, has a funny way of putting things in your path right when you need it, even when it doesn't feel like it's what you need. It's totally.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it was also my dad talking to Bo. My dad's friends with Bo, so he probably hit up Bo, and Bo hit up Matt. It's like, also my family looking out for me too. So
yeah. So do you feel like that is probably the closest you've been? Like, what have you gotten to a point where you almost just said, hands up, fuck it, I'm done?
Oh man. I think that temptation is there. Especially early on, that temptation was there so much, especially with my whole family in Wisconsin. Like, I'm homesick all the time. I miss my family all the time. When I'd go home for a longer visit and I'm there, and immediately when I get off the plane in Madison, my anxiety splits down to 1/10 of what it is in LA. And immediately when I land in LA, I'm just vibrating, because it's just an electric place. And it's just such a different vibe in all the good and in the bad ways. But yeah, I miss Wisconsin. I miss Madison. I miss my family all the time. So, it is tempting to just say, like, I don't need to do all this. Like, I can go do something else and just be closer to my family.
Do you have the potential to work more remotely, or is a lot of your work in studio all the time? Because I mean, in theory, it would be pretty dope to be able to go up to Roach Lake and be in Minocqua and just like set up shop there, just install the first like really solid internet connection in northern Wisconsin and work from there.
Totally. I mean, that's the dream. I feel like that's really why I'm busting my ass right now, is like, do, you know, another 3 to 5 years here, just hustling, busting my ass super hard. And then, you know, I would love to maybe get a house in the suburbs of Nashville, because I could still be in the music scene there. Get a nice Tesla that's going to drive me up to Madison at 4 a.m. and end up in Madison in the afternoon, like to go do long weekends with my family. Like, that's my dream. But I do fantasize totally about just disappearing, just only working strictly from a cabin in the middle of nowhere. You know, obviously, Minocqua being a super special place that I love to go write. And although more often than that, when I get up there, what I really need is just rest. And so I go up there and just unplug and read and rest, and then I'm rejuvenated for when I get back to LA, and then I do some of my best work because I'm actually rested. But I do think you can work remotely. There's so many amazing artists who aren't in LA who do it and, you know, write amazing records and make a living remotely. Certainly after the pandemic, when Zoom sessions became a thing and we're all, you know, this is a perfect example. Look at us doing your podcast on via FaceTime. It's like, you know, we all learned, especially through the pandemic, how to do things remotely. And I think a lot of people are going, go back into an office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. No,
why am I
thanks.
paying $4,000 in rent for a 1-bedroom apartment? What am I doing? Yeah.
Right. So it's a different time right now. I certainly can work remotely, but I just think so much is happening in LA. So many things happen so fast. I'm grateful to be here. I'm still so excited.
And there's that energy too that you really can't match. Like, now that I'm in Austin and full-time remote everything, I haven't had an in-person session. I had one last year for a couple hours, but it was me and the engineer, and he was one full studio over engineering because of COVID restrictions. So I was still alone, and the team on the other end was in Germany. So it's like, it's when you get those in-person sessions, or you get to even just see somebody's face through FaceTime, it helps so much. And do you feel like that's similar with that? With, I mean, being in Korea and doing the sessions that you did there, and all of that, you can't replace the human aspect, the human element in person.
Totally. I mean, through the pandemic, I definitely did a lot of Zoom sessions, and it can be done. You can still write great records that way, but it's a little funky, and it doesn't, for me, replace being in the room with people and just feeling the energy and the vibes of like how everyone's reacting to the ideas, and just like keeping everyone in the same space. And there's like a rhythm to it. And I so much prefer being in the room with people for what session work is like and what it's like putting a song together. So I haven't been doing Zoom sessions in a while, and I don't really see myself doing that. But it can be done. Like, if I'm working with like a DJ who's in Norway and we want to collaborate, it's like, you don't need to fly out here. Let's jump on Zoom, and we all learned how to do that in the pandemic. So a lot of people still do Zoom sessions, and I'm sure I'll continue to do them here and there. But yeah, I mean, I fantasize about that all the time. Is like the day that I get to go, goodbye, LA. I'll come back here once in a while, but I am going to go somewhere that's a lot greener and a lot quieter.
It's been interesting leaving New York for us too, because whenever we'd come back to visit either my family in Chicago or Jess's family down here in Texas, inevitably the grandparents would always ask, so when are you coming back? When are you moving back? When are you moving back? What are you doing? And there's that little ping of like, oh man, this could be interesting. But it is, it's now that I'm not in New York anymore, I miss it dearly. And I think I realized like how much I really loved that experience of being in New York as soon as we decided that we were going to be leaving. So, but the thing with New York and LA is they're always going to be there. Knock on wood.
Totally. Totally.
But
I've only been to New York once, but I get that from, it's crazy that I've only been there once, but like the one time I went there, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I get.
It's funny. People either say like, I get it, or this is not for me. And I get that perspective of it too, because it is a lot. Is that it's like when you said that buzzing energy of getting off the plane in LA. It's that same thing in New York. It's like, ooh, okay, we're back, let's go. And it's and moving down to Austin is definitely it's a much slower pace. For the first 2 weeks, I was like, why nobody's like walking, nobody moves here. What's going on?
Yeah.
And Jess was like, it's because they're taking a breath, and you don't have to like hustle as quickly for everything. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. One of my favorite examples of that is like getting off of a plane that just arrived in LAX versus getting off a plane that just arrived in Madison, Wisconsin. And what the energy is like. And like,
oh, welcome home. Here's a beer and some cheese curds, and they've got all the cheese heads in the Madison airport.
Yeah. And just like in LAX, people get off the plane like they're just shot out of a cannon, and then people in the Midwest are just like, the person you're sitting next to, you feel like you've known your whole life. You know, like,
it's a bunch of, oh, nope, you go first. Oh.
Yeah, no, take your, oh, yeah, no, of course. Can I grab your bag for you? Yeah.
You want a piggyback ride to your to the baggage carousel?
Exactly.
So with NBC's Songland, that whole experience was fucking wild. I can't even imagine
so crazy
what that was like. But what was the process of getting on the show? And then once you arrived, how did that like? What was that process versus what we got to see on TV, and how did that affect, like, what was the aftermath of that show? Getting
on the show, a lot of auditions. I had the song, you know, you send they have like a submission thing, so you send the demo in. I'm sure they have a team of people who listen to the demos and pair them with the episodes. You do a ton of interviews on the phone, you do in-person interviews, you go in, you play the song. It's like a whole background thing. It's I'm sure it's similar to like what Idol and Voice and all these shows do, but and then the experience itself is just super, super surreal. It's like a massive production, so you know, you have makeup, wardrobe, you know, you're being escorted around, everybody's got headsets, you know, you're just like, I was just trying to unplug from all that and just try to focus on just playing the song properly and hitting the notes and remembering the lyrics and not just completely shitting myself on live TV.
Yeah. Do you get so one nervous. Take and that's it? It is one live take to pitch it to them, and if you crack, you crack. If you go up, you go up.
I think I got two. But yeah, you're not there doing 100 takes. You know, you go out and it's legit. You're going out and you're playing it for the judges panel, the panel of judges. It's so surreal. I always say it's like a Black Mirror episode, but like instead of the Black Mirror episode being terrifying, like it was terrifying, but like instead of it being a horror film, like everything went amazingly, and it was like such an awesome experience. But yeah,
what was that physical sensation in your body like before you play, like walking out and then playing that song and afterwards? Like what did that feel like physically, emotionally?
You know, I was really glad going through that I played high school sports, because the closest thing I can compare it to was like high school basketball and high school football, where you just have like an insane amount of nervousness, excitement, adrenaline. Like I kept trying to call my nervousness excitement, because that was a psychological thing that I learned in that era, was like, you're not nervous for the game, you're excited for the game. So I tried to put all of that nervousness and excitement into preparing. Like I got up at, I think it was 4 a.m. every day to have a light eggs and broccoli breakfast at the Denny's across the street from the hotel that we were staying at. I got in my car and did vocal warm-ups for an hour before going on set, because I had to perform really early. For some reason, I was like one of the first people to play the song, and I was performing really early in the day, which vocally that's really
not
different.
Ideal. That's
really, really difficult for singers, and that song has a super high falsetto, and it's like a really tough song to sing. Like when we cut the original demo, it was like super comped, and like, you know, you do like 50 takes and you pull like the best bites from the 50 takes, but like when you're performing it live on a show like that, you got to just hit it. So I was definitely super nervous, but I also like believed it was a great song for OneRepublic. Like I could hear it, so I was excited and I like believed in it. So yeah, just the most nerves I've ever had for sure. I was like a nervous wreck for like the weeks and months leading up to it. I was nervous as hell the day of. I was nervous while I was doing it, but I got through it, and
obviously it went all right.
Yeah, went great. As cliche and as cliche and as corny and as typical as it sounds, like I definitely like thinking about getting to go home to Madison and like watch it on TV and celebrate with my family was like what got me through it. Like if I was just doing that for myself, there's no way I would have gone through all that, but like that made it all worth it for me. And that was like the best part of it, was just like getting to go home to Madison and watch it on TV with my fam and celebrate
kind of bask
with them.
in that and celebrate, take it off your Dropbox finally.
Totally. Yeah.
Now, have you started to see any kind of NFT integration and with your label that you're with and with your publishing company, and like how that started to creep in? Because obviously, like Snoop, Eminem, and a lot of like really, really big names are part of like Bored Ape Yacht Club and doing their own thing with their own crypto labels and stuff like that. Have you started to see any of that with your work or any of the artists you're working with?
I wish I was a better resource on NFTs. I do know that it's a wave right now in the industry. I think especially for people who are already like massive artists and have massive fan bases. Like to me, it's the way I see it is it's like a way for artists to connect directly from their fans and fans to give funding and like money directly to their favorite artists and to invest in their favorite artists. That's largely what it feels like to me. And I think that's a really good thing, because I think a lot of, you watch behind the music, and a lot of these artists like early, 90s, early 2000s signed deals where like, getting them to recoup on the massive advances on their record deal. Like they were like broke, and like, even though they were like massive artists with massive fan base, like TLC or, whoever it is. But if you think about the fans loving them, and if the fans can go, I'm going to buy your artwork I'm going to invest in your single via your artwork so that you can get money from me that goes direct to you. And then I'm like a part of your project, and I'm invested in it.
There's ownership on both sides of the equation, instead of just the label being able to kind of abuse that contract. And
totally. I think that's so sick. And I think that that's like going to continue to evolve. And I think that it's going to, I think to a certain extent, there's some just like crazy stuff happening right now. Like people, I've heard of like a big artist who gave somebody like, I think it was like $500,000 to get an NFT to be on this list for this massive NFT organization, so they could be on a list for the events that the NFT were doing. But like, if they're already a massive artist, they can afford that NFT, and then they get invited to these parties with all these massive artists, and they're like placing records with these massive artists, and like all these influential people are there. Like I get it, it's like I'm not cool enough to be like in those circles, like, where I'm going to parties, right? Yeah, of course. But like, it feels like a cool people's club, and it's like cool people making more money.
Yeah, if you have that audience and you have that community already established, then it's worth it. But a little harder to build if it's not already there.
Totally. But for like up and coming artists too, I just see it like, I think it's going to more and more become a way for artists to connect directly with their fans. Much like TikTok, TikTok's a wave right now because artists are blowing up who can tell their story and connect with their fans directly through social media and bypass labels, and kill it with their careers just because they can connect directly with their fans. Like any way you can connect directly with your fans and get them invested in you as a person and for your art, that's gonna be a wave.
Yeah. Awesome. JT, thank you so much for taking time out to do this chat and to get caught up. I have a couple short things I'd like to ask you. I've got a round of quick fire questions.
Let's do it.
So what is a nickname that your parents called you growing up?
Oh, I mean, other than JT, I think it was Teaser, Jay Teaser. Like a lot of my dad's side of the family called me Teaser when I was like a little kid.
Awesome.
And then now everybody calls me Tiz. Like
Tiz.
Snoop Dogg phase, Jay Tizzle, Tiz. Most of my family calls me Tiz.
Right.
Now.
It's like that. It's that P Diddy development.
Exactly. Yep.
Who inspires you right now?
Oh man. There's a guy named Yonsei. He's the lead singer of Sigaros.
Okay.
He's probably one of my favorite artists on the planet right now. He did a project called Rice Boy Sleeps. That's like my favorite album of all time. I saw it live at the Orpheum in downtown LA. I think it's called the Orpheum. And it was like part ambient, part orchestral. He had like a whole symphony playing it. It's the most beautiful concert I've ever seen. I love him.
Wow.
I'm super inspired by him. So I would say he's probably my number one, like, biggest musical inspiration right now.
Awesome. What is a piece of content that you're consuming right now you can't get enough of? It could be a book, could be a TV show, podcast.
Great British Bake Off.
Yes, that's the right answer.
Been crushing those. It's like, just like, how can you not be in a great mood watching that show? It's
yeah, I know.
Like
I mean, if you enter it and you are in a pissy mood or you've had a terrible day, you watch it and you see all the positivity and you can't not. The hosts are great too. I love that old Greg is one of the main hosts now.
So
if you
good.
don't know what old Greg is, everybody go watch it, YouTube it.
So good.
All right, last quick fire is you can only have pizza one last time. Where from and what's on it?
Oh man. My dad makes homemade pizza that he gets from Gino's in Madison. He buys the crust from Gino's and fresh tomato sauce and cheese, and then we make them at home. And he just got a new thing to make it on the grill on our back porch. He posted it on Facebook. It looks amazing, so I can't wait to get home and have a pizza with him. That's my favorite pizza.
Done. Well, JT, where can everybody find you on social and your website and hear you in stuff coming up?
All the socials, JT Roach or JT Roach Music on all the socials. Spotify, Apple Music, JT Roach. Yeah, pretty easy to find out there. Just Google me.
Amazing. JT, thank you so much. This was so fucking sweet. And
great to see you, bud.
It's great to see you too. And I'm so stoked that you are continuing to just make things happen. And it's inspirational and just awesome to see.
You too, brother. I loved the podcast with you and your dad too. I love that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for checking that out.
Yeah, I love your family so much, and yeah, just
and
one
yours
big family. Yeah, one in the same family.
We got
really, but
goal for the next album is we got to get Mary Beth involved somehow.
Always.
Just sample her saying fuck.
Always. She's a legend.
Yeah. All right, JT, thank you so much. And everybody stay tuned. Follow him on Instagram and on Spotify. Stay tuned for his drop in October. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Thanks, bud. Good to see you.
Bye. Thank you kindly for listening to this episode of Second Cup Extra Cup with my cousin, JT Roach. You can keep up with everything JT has going on, including the upcoming drop, on Instagram at JT Roach and at JT Roach Music everywhere else. As you know, this show is recorded and produced by Tim Heller Creative, LLC. If you enjoyed this episode or any of the others, I invite you to show support in any of the following ways. First is by sharing episode links on social media and tagging me at Tim Heller Creative. Second is by rating and leaving reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening and watching. Third is subscribing, liking, and commenting on our YouTube channel at Tim Heller Creative. And finally, if you want to support financially, you can Venmo at Tim Heller Creative or reach out via email to me at tim@timhellercreative.com. Special shout out to Jackson Perrin and his team of musicians and engineers in New York for putting together the Second Cup intro and outro music. If you've been listening to the show and you'd like to be a part of it, or know someone who you think should be a part of it, or just have a suggestion for what we should include in our content coming up, shoot me a message on Instagram or TikTok, or send me an email. I am more than willing to hear suggestions and open to any feedback or constructive criticism. Tune in next time for another incredible conversation and to hopefully learn something new from a really cool person. Toodles!